Saturday morning, I gave a class about the 3 types of healthy relationships a devotee needs. And what are those 3? Mentors, peers, and students, dependents. So, Radhika Raman Prabhu pointed out that Lord Balaram serves in these exact same 3 capacities in relation to Lord Krishna. This is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami gives examples of how Lord Balaram is sometimes Krishna's guru, he is sometimes Krishna's friend, and he's sometimes Krishna's servant. So this morning we decided we're going to review these pastimes and discuss them in these 3 distinct relationships that the Lord Balaram maintains with Lord Krishna. Lord Balaram is, of course, the original spiritual master for everybody. Krishna is busy in Goloka Vrindavan with his pastimes, with his loving devotees, and for everyone else, for all the rest of us, he delegates to Lord Balaram. So Lord Balaram is the person that Srila Prabhupada said we can approach with our problems. If we approach the deities and we have some difficulty, we should say, Lord Balaram, sir, here such and such is the difficulty. So on this very auspicious day, we're going to celebrate the various facets of Lord Balaram's remarkable and diverse personality. So the first example we're going to present and discuss is how Lord Balaram is sometimes Krishna's guru. And as Krishna's guru, he manifested this relationship when Krishna kidnapped Rukmini. When Krishna kidnapped Rukmini, Lord Balaram heard about Krishna's departure. And so he went after him with an army, just in case there was trouble at the Swayamvara when he was kidnapping Rukmini. So indeed there was trouble, there was an attack, and then Lord Balaram and his legions fought off all of the opposing kings who wanted to stop Krishna from kidnapping Rukmini. Of course, it wasn't really kidnapping, it was a cooperative venture. Nonetheless, the kings attacked, Balaram fought them back, and only one person continued attacking after that. Who was that? Rukmi. So Balaram had some very interesting interactions with Rukmi. Rukmi said, Rukmi cried out, "That wicked cowherd somehow got away with kidnapping my sister on her joyous wedding day. My arrows shall remove his pride." With this, the prince attacked the chariot of Krishna with his sister in the back. "Just stand and fight, you coward," cried Rukmi, who gave a laugh and penetrated Krishna with 3 formidable shafts. "You've made off with my sister like a crow might steal some ghee. Wherever you may run, you thief, you'll not be rid of me. Release this girl before my stinging arrows finish you." Before Rukmi could shoot again, his bow was sliced in 2. Rukmi was quite heroic, fighting Krishna on his own. He took a new bow, even as Lord Krishna's shafts had flown. Again he struck Lord Krishna, who again destroyed his bow. Though he had lost, Rukmi was cross and not prepared to go. So as we know, then Rukmi was captured by Krishna, but Rukmini was begging, please spare his life, don't kill him. So what did Krishna do? He gave him a half of a haircut. Rukmini looked very comical. His tresses and mustache were largely scattered at his feet by Krishna's artful slash. When Balaram returned, he saw Rukmini was mortified. Untying the embarrassed prince, he spoke up for the bride. "My brother, you've defamed us. Have you failed to realize disfiguring this in-law brings him shame in others' eyes? An in-law should be banished, never killed when he has sinned. Besides, his sin has killed him once. Why kill him once again? Though Rukmini chose you to be her husband, sight unseen, Rukmi tried to coerce her to become his comrade's queen. Conceit and power led him to commit this grave offense, but he has suffered quite enough. Please show some common sense." So then he spoke to Rukmini also to pacify her by explaining how your brother's not his body, we're not these bodies. Enlightened by Lord Balaram, the princess calmed her mind and saw herself as spirit, as the Lord so well defined. Rukmi, however, shaven, pallid, weakened, and deprived, constructed a new city there and stayed to nurse his pride. Rukmi had promised, I will either defeat Krishna or I'll never come back. And so because he lost, he just stayed there and built a new city. So then, Lord Balaram went to visit that city. The occasion was that the King Rukmi had a daughter, Lakshmana, and somehow Krishna's eldest son, Pradyumna, and she wanted to marry. Hare Krishna Jai Radhika Chanji. So these were cousins. There are southern states in the U.S. where this still goes on. Cousins marrying. I don't know about Texas. But in any case, the question is, why would Rukmi allow Krishna's son, who he hated Krishna, but why would he allow Krishna's son to marry his daughter? And Shukadeva Goswami gives the answer that because he cared so much for his daughter, he was willing to tolerate it. So Krishna and Balaram were obliged to come for this family affair, this wedding. The couple wed and celebrated in Rukmi's domain. Obliged by etiquette, both Balaram and Krishna came. Rukmi's puffed-up associates gave him this bad advice. Why not embarrass Balaram by beating him at dice? The match began with wagers of 10,000 coins of gold. Rukmi prevailed, and all his wicked friends could not withhold their pleasure seeing Balaram subjected to this grief. Kalinga's king laughed loud and hard, exposing all his teeth. Rukmi then bet 100,000 coins to up the fun. Lord Balaram accepted, but this time his numbers won. Rukmi, however, cheated. He picked up the dice and cried, "Aha, I've won again. Good luck is surely on my side." Lord Balaram was trembling like the sea on full moon day. He bet 100 million coins and dared Rukmi to play. When Balaram again prevailed, Rukmi stood up and screamed, "I won! Let all these witnesses confirm what they have seen." Election interference. The witnesses, Rukmi's dishonest friends, of course, all lied. Then, suddenly, an unembodied voice rang through the sky. Rukmi has lied, for Balaram has fairly won this match. Though destiny was calling him, Rukmi was too attached. Rukmi ignored the voice. He laughed at Balaram and said, "You forest people can't play dice. Go tend your cows instead. The sports of dice and archery and other things we do are meant for kings like us and not for cowherds such as you." Insulted and defrauded by Rukmi, Lord Balaram, provoked enough to set aside his usual aplomb, surrounded by the wedding guests in festive mood of love, struck dead the thieving Rukmi with his swift, unerring club. Rukmi's companions, warriors all, abruptly lost their nerve and fled in all directions when they saw what had occurred. Lord Balaram's ferocious club left them in bloody grief. Kalinga's king, the one who laughed, was struck and lost his teeth. Lord Krishna neither cheered nor raged at Balaram's assault. Rukmi was loved by Rukmini despite his many faults. The Lord had bonds of love with both, and he did not want to risk, so he observed without a word, his face expressionless. Lord Balaram and Aniruddha and Rukmavati aboard a fine new chariot. He sat them aboard a fine new chariot. Lord Krishna's family did not lament as they all went to Dwarka, their home, for malice to their Lord was all Rukmi had ever shown. Purport?
Please say something.
Well, this is the devotee is sometimes softer than a rose and harder than a thunderbolt, right? So Lord Balaram chastised Krishna for insulting Rukmi, and then he proceeded to kill Rukmi under another set of circumstances. So as Krishna's guru, Balaram showed that there are multi-dimensions that one may have as a spiritual master. Sometimes there is chastisement, sometimes there's even independent action that affects the disciple. And the guru is receiving the direction from higher authorities and acting accordingly. So this is one lesson we can see in this pastime. But I believe the pastime is cited particularly because Krishna was chastising his brother. Balaram was chastising his brother for insulting and not dealing properly with Rukmi. So I always love this dichotomy Balaram shows.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that if we think our family politics are complicated, look at Krishna's family. The whole 10th canto is full of, after he leaves Vrindavan. Vrindavan is a simple place. It's very simple. It's complex in other ways, but once he leaves Vrindavan, things become really complex. And, Pradyumna is marrying the daughter of his enemy, and he has to go to the wedding. And the wedding, there's a conflict, and so many things are taking place. This role of Lord Balaram as Krishna's guru or his teacher is something very special. Every devotee, as we start our Krishna consciousness, our attempt is to find a way to serve Krishna, to do what he bids of us. And that is the devotee's anxiety. When that devotee's devotion to Krishna becomes so intense and so elevated, things flip, things change. The devotee never gives up wanting to serve Krishna, but something amazing happens, which is Krishna becomes an anxiety about how do I please this devotee? What is it that I can do to please her or him? And we see this in Krishna's willingness to take a submissive role, a subservient role to so many devotees in his pastimes. Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, Srimati Radharani at times, right, when he's trying to pacify her because she's upset. But especially Lord Balaram, whom he appears in this form as Krishna's elder brother. And here we see that in this pastime and in others, Lord Balaram has this role of telling Krishna what he needs to do, and Krishna is very concerned to make sure that he acts appropriately to Lord Balaram's desire. This gives us, Lord Balaram's devotees, a very special opportunity, because Krishna is so dependent on Lord Balaram. Therefore, if we seek out his mercy, then we too stand a chance before Krishna, because Krishna cannot turn away Lord Baladev. We see this again and again. Sometimes he'll work around him and he'll find a way to get around him, but never to his face. Never to his face will he ever turn down a request from Lord Baladev. One time in the Krishna Balaram temple, someone asked Srila Prabhupada, of Krishna and Balaram, between them, who is stronger? And Prabhupada said, you look at them. Whose hand is above, right? And that's Lord Baladev, right? He's got his hand on top of Krishna's shoulder. So we will hear very soon about how Lord Balaram is always Krishna's servant. But in their pastimes, this role of being older to Krishna is one that Krishna relishes a lot. In fact, our acharyas say that when in every appearance, when Krishna appears, Baladev also appears with him. Right? He never comes alone. They're always a pair. And in his appearance as Lord Ramachandra, he came as Lakshman. And Lakshman was his younger brother. And so after the pastimes of the Ramayana, so many times Lakshman wanted to prevent Lord Ramachandra from doing things that would give him trouble. He's always concerned about his brother. So like, why are you going to the forest in exile? So what about this promise? This is not right. You stay here and rule the kingdom and enjoy life with Mother Sita. When Lord Ramachandra ran off to find the deer for Mother Sita, Lakshman was telling him, don't go, this is a trap. I can see it, that's a demon. And Lord Ram said, no, I'm going. She wants it, I'm going to go. You stay here. And he was not able to stop him in those circumstances. So our acharyas say that in the mood of pastime, Lord Balaram said, this is the last time I'm going to ever show up as a younger brother. In future lifetimes, I will be the older. So even as Lord Nityananda, he comes as the elder brother, so that I can better serve the Lord by keeping him out of unnecessary trouble. And here he tries valiantly. Yes. He tries valiantly to protect his marriage, right? We can imagine what happens if you kill your brother-in-law. It's not a great start to any marriage. And so he's protecting Krishna, right, by chastising him. He's saying, don't do this. Can't you see your new bride is distraught because her brother is being humiliated? This is not good. So he's attempting to protect Krishna. But the Lord is always independent. And the spiritual master is always independent. And here, then in the second half of the story, he demonstrates his independence by saying, okay, you've crossed a limit, you've crossed a line, right? No more. And he strikes him down with the club, and that's it. So from this we can see that both sides of the spiritual master, as Kalakantha Prabhu was saying. But particularly we can see that because the devotee has the upper hand over Krishna, this is what gives us hope, right? If we approach the spiritual master, if we go to Srila Prabhupada and say, please show us your mercy, and Srila Prabhupada says, yes, for one reason or another, I'm willing to take you under my wing, then Krishna has little choice but to accept, because the spiritual master is the representative of Lord Balaram, who is the original spiritual master, and when Lord Baladev says something, Krishna has to say yes. So that is our entrance into Krishna's mercy, is through Lord Baladev.
Yeah. Today's the appearance day of Lord Balaram, and of course we remember how Balaram was instructed to enter the womb of Devaki, and then was miscarried, and transferred actually to the womb of Rohini. But he had entered Devaki's womb to purify it and prepare it for Krishna's appearance. That was the idea. So this is his role as the elder brother, and why he's the elder. Just remembering there was an argument once between Jamuna Prabhu and Revatinanda Prabhu. They were in India, two senior disciples of Srila Prabhupada. They were arguing. Revati said, there's no difference between Krishna and Balaram. And Jamuna said, no, Balaram's relationship with Radharani is different than Krishna's relationship with Radharani. So they're going back and forth. And finally, Tamal Krishna Maharaj went in to ask Srila Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, Revati said, there's no difference between Krishna and Balaram. Prabhupada said, he is right. But Jamuna says that they have different relationships with Radharani. She's right. But Prabhupada, they can't both be right. You're right. So these relationships are very fluid and inconceivable. So in terms of Krishna acting as the peer rather Balaram acting as a peer of Krishna, we're going to read now about him visiting Vrindavan. We all know how the residents of Vrindavan were missing Krishna, and Balaram was also missing Vrindavan. So on his own, he decided to go, and while there, bring some comfort to all of those who were missing his brother so much, a friendly gesture. Lord Balaram, after arriving in Vrindavan, he refreshed himself, returned, and sitting down, accepted many questions from the cowherds gathered round. Their voices shaking out of love, they asked about the health of Krishna and the Yadus and of Balaram himself. By this time, Krishna and Balaram and their families were in Dwarka. By fortune, Kamsa died along with other enemies, and Krishna built our relatives a fortress in the sea. Dear Balaram, are all the Yadus doing well again? Do some of you discuss and think about us now and then? The gopis asked Lord Balaram with suitable respect, is Krishna happy with the city girls as we suspect? Does he recall his father and his mother? Will he come? Does he recall us gopis and the service we have done? For Krishna we abandon every person we held dear. And how does he reciprocate? He simply disappears. How do these learned city women give him so much trust? No doubt his words enchant them and his smiles arouse their lust. Why don't we change the subject? Please do not bring up his name. If he can live without us, let us simply do the same. Remembering his laughter, his embraces, and his eyes, the gopis thought of Krishna and gave in to mournful cries. like you need some psychological help. An expert in conciliation, Balaram replied, I have some confidential news that Krishna has supplied. As Balaram repeated all his brother's secret words, the gopis felt relief and comfort, pleased with what they'd heard. Now, at this point in the Bhagavatam, we don't know what are those secret words that Balaram shares with the gopis. They come out later when Krishna and his family meet the residents of Vrindavan in Kurukshetra. And there Krishna repeats the same thing that Balaram has told them, which is, Krishna is everywhere. Don't you know? Krishna is always with you. How can you be separate from Krishna? So at this point, that pacifies the gopis. But when Krishna tries the same routine in Kurukshetra, they say, no way. We're not falling for that again. You're coming with us to Vrindavan on this chariot with your brother and sister. Come on. Nonetheless, they felt very happy to see Krishna, to see Balaram, and they went out again on the rasa dance, just as they had done with Krishna for 60 nights. So on one occasion, Balaram, who was sometimes prone to drinking Varuni, was rolling his eyes and cavorting with the gopis, and they felt a little warm. So Balaram called to the Jamuna, come here, come here. And she refused to come. So he began digging trenches with his plow to force her to come. And then she came very obediently. So this pastime is described. And then Shukadev goes on into another pastime about Pondraka. But then Parikshit Maharaj comes back and says, did Balaram do anything else while he was in Vrindavan? And Shukadev says, well, as a matter of fact, there was another incident while he was there. A servant of Lord Ramachandra, Dvidvita by name, fell in with Baumasura and was thoroughly defamed. This hairy ape, upset by Bauma's death, ransacked the land, destroying homes and villages completely out of hand. He tore up mountains, using them to slaughter peaceful towns. He churned the sea so mightily that coastal people drowned. He spoiled sacred rites by passing urine, gas, and stool, and shut up helpless people in dark caves. He was that cruel. One day, Dvidvita, primed for rape and other violent ills, heard sweet, attractive singing in the Raivataka hills. He came upon Lord Balaram, absorbed in luscious play with lovely gopis drinking Varuni from pots of clay. Lord Balaram wore lotuses on every handsome limb. With drinks and songs and rolling eyes and gopis circling him, the mischievous Dvidvita scrambled up a nearby tree and sounded out, Kila, Kila, in vulgar mockery. The gopis started giggling at the impudent display, for as young girls, they tended to behave in silly ways. Without regard for Balaram, the ape displayed his teeth. He turned around, bent over, and displayed his underneath. Disgusted, Balaram picked up a rock and let it fly. The crafty ape avoided it and, in a rude reply, picked up the pot of Varuni and smashed it to the ground. He pulled the gopi's clothing and produced offensive sounds. Lord Balaram despised these acts. He also understood dispatching of this wicked ape would do the planet good. But as the Lord picked up his club, Tudvita broke a tree and brought it down on Balaram with great dexterity. Lord Balaram stood motionless despite the heavy blow, and struck Tudvita's skull so hard that blood began to flow. Tudvita snapped another tree and stripped it with his arms, but Balaram just splintered it, avoiding any harm. This scene went on again and yet again until all around the forest had grown treeless, so they fought on naked ground. The angry ape released a rain of rocks on Balaram, who smashed each one to pebbles with his club, remaining calm. The furious Tudvita chose to foolishly persist by beating Balaram directly with his primate fists. Disposing of his club, Lord Balaram employed his hand to strike a single crushing blow the ape could not withstand. Tudvita crumpled to a heap and bid his life farewell. An earthquake wobbled Raivataka mountain as he fell. Lord Balaram returned to home as people sang their love. The earth rejoiced, as did the sages, saints, and gods above. So here he is, again, getting very violent. Why does Balaram always get so violent? Any remarks?
Yeah, Lord Balaram is very easily pleased and very easily angered as well, and he doesn't tolerate offense to Krishna or his devotees. We see this in his pastimes. We'll see this in the next pastime too. This is a red line he draws. When there's offense to Krishna or to his devotees, Lord Balaram's compassion runs thin. Until that point, for someone who is misled or otherwise in a difficult situation or despised even by others, he gives them a long chance to improve. In fact, Duryodhana was disliked by everyone, Krishna, the Pandavas, everyone. But Lord Balaram agreed to serve as his guru in the teaching of the club. One of Lord Baladev's names is Duryodhana Guru, the spiritual master of Duryodhana. And that is a testament to his willingness to be patient and tolerant. But when someone crosses the line in terms of offenses to devotees, then Balaram responds with significant force, as we see here when Dvivida crossed the line of tormenting the gopis. Then he couldn't tolerate it anymore. This story of Lord Baladev going to Vrindavan is really, really beautiful. It's the gopis' response to Lord Baladev is one of the most heart-wrenching sections of the 10th canto, I find. The gopis, when Lord Balaram is there and they're exchanging pleasantries, the gopis are trying their very best to be respectable, to be courteous. They have so much, there's a whole storm brewing inside. But they're trying very hard, and they begin in the most humble way possible by asking not about themselves. They ask, does Krishna ever remember Vrindavan? Does he ever remember his poor parents who haven't slept for days, who cry streams of tears? Does he ever remember this person? Does he ever remember them? And at the end of all of that, they say, does he ever remember us? They finally get to that question, and at that point, then we heard their emotions get the better of them, and they say, no, we don't want to talk about this anymore. We've had it with Krishna. And even as they've had it with him, they can't stop but help but remember him. So this is extraordinary love of God. We struggle to remember Krishna. They struggle to forget Krishna. They try. They would love to forget Krishna. In fact, they would be jealous of us for being able to do that so easily. Many times they complain about the fact that we try to get this boy out of our heads and we cannot. What is our problem? It is better that we die than suffer like this, and yet we cannot even die. Why can they not die? Is because their death would give too much pain to Krishna. In fact, in the story of the bee, when Srimati Radharani speaks to the bee, in those moments, she gives her loudest, clearest complaints to Krishna for his behavior. That you have been unfaithful just like a bee, going from one flower to another to get nectar. But no sooner has she given her criticism that she immediately panics with the concern that what if this bee were to send the message, take this message to Krishna, and the pain it would give to his heart to know that we were speaking like this. If I were in such a situation of being abandoned, the least I would want is for that person to know how much I was suffering on their account, right? It demonstrates love. And yet, the gopis' love is so extraordinarily selfless that they will not even give themselves the pleasure of letting Krishna know how much they are suffering on their account, on his account. And immediately they pull back, both in this story and in the story of the bee. Baladev here functions in a very wonderful manner. He serves here, even in Vrindavan, as guru, where he's guiding the Brajabasis, helping them to control their emotions, to go on with their service. We see this actually, this role of Lord Balaram as guru in Vrindavan many times. Even in the Kaliya story, you know, when Krishna is in the clutches of Kaliya, and Nanda and Yashoda and the cowherd boys, and the men and women of Vrindavan find out, they all come running to the banks of the Yamuna. They follow Krishna's footprints, and they can get to his spot where he jumped into the river. And the first thing Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj want to do is jump into the river right behind, which would of course mean certain death. Guess who stops them? It's Lord Balaram. He puts out his very powerful arms and he holds back all the Brijbasis. Don't go in. You cannot. I know Krishna can handle this. Even though in Vrindavan, the mood is never that Krishna is powerful. It's always that Krishna is vulnerable. Yet Balaram sacrifices that mood in order to serve as guru, to facilitate, to protect the Brajabasis from something, right? Even Lord Balaram is absorbed in this mood. Krishna is my little brother. He's helpless. And that's his mood. But occasionally he will sacrifice that mood to serve in his function as guru. So the point being that this role of spiritual master, it never disappears. It never goes away. Even in the spiritual world, we are working in the guidance of the spiritual master, assisting in that service, right? This is described very nicely in the morning song, the Gurvashtaka that we sing. Nikunja yuno ratikeli siddhyai yaya libhir yukti rapekshaniya tatrati dakshad ativallabhasya. That the spiritual master is very expert in assisting Radha and Krishna in their pastimes, and she's very expert in guiding others in serving alongside. Yuktasya bhaktams chaniyunjatopi vande guroshri charanaravindam. So we see this with Lord Balaram, that he's very expert at serving Krishna and very expert at guiding others in serving Krishna, even in Vrindavan Dham, where we might think that no one needs guidance whatsoever. But everyone does, at all times, right? In all places. And ultimately, Krishna himself, in the form of Lord Balaram, offers that guidance. So this particular story, Lord Balaram is offering that guidance, but very much in the role of friend. We selected this as Lord Balaram as peer, right? Mm-hmm. And how he's acting as Krishna's friend. How? By serving as Krishna's representative, by being his messenger, and by helping him, in this case, recover his reputation in Vrindavan. Because Krishna said he would be back in just 1 or 2 days, I will be back to Vrindavan after killing Kamsa. And years later, he's not back. So Lord Baladev has gone to serve as his representative. And this is the role of a friend, right? This is a role of a friend, to help the friend in times when they need some defense. They need to be represented well. There's this very nice telling line in Nectar of Devotion where Srila Prabhupada says that preaching Krishna consciousness is in the mood of friendship with Krishna. Why? Because the preacher is serving as Krishna's well-wisher. How? By making Krishna look good to the world, right? By representing Krishna. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in his commentary on this verse, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Arjuna, you declare it boldly to the world that my devotee never perishes. And of course, the question is, why does Krishna tell Arjuna to declare it boldly? And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti says, it is because it is the devotee's job to make Krishna look good. People may not believe Krishna. The outsiders, the devotees do. But he says outsiders may not, because he has a checkered reputation, right? He steals butter, he steals clothes, he steals hearts. How do you trust someone who's a thief? So Vishwanath Chakravarti says, therefore the preacher's job is to be trustworthy and make Krishna look trustworthy. And this is what Lord Balaram is doing. He's serving as Krishna's well-wisher by coming to Vrindavan and ensuring that everyone still maintains some hope and some faith in Krishna.
You made such a nice point in class yesterday. Excuse me, about the separation and the power of forgetfulness, how it is part of the duality, right? That we lament when we lose somebody, but then we are able to forget, just as a survival mechanism. Smritir apohana, remembering, forgetting. And yet the gopis just could not forget in spite of their efforts. So they're jealous of us. At the same time, their devotion is considered the highest for that reason. They just can't forget. And Balaram is there to bring that out, really. He brought out in them how they were trying to forget Krishna and yet could not forget Krishna. And they were so immersed in lamentation that he then placated them as his service and made them happy. Okay? So now we'll read one last pastime about Krishna, Krishna's servant, Balaram, coming in this particular capacity to rescue Krishna's son from a difficult situation. When Lakshmana, the daughter of Duryodhana, became of age to marry, many famous kings and princes came to take part in her Swayamvara ritual, for she would choose her husband there, and she was lovely as could be. Now Samba, son of Krishna, always carried in his mind the urge to marry Lakshmana, but she was not inclined. So Samba chose to kidnap her, a custom of the day. Before she could select her man, he carried her away. The kinsmen of Duryodhana, the Kuru clan, exclaimed, "This rogue has stolen Lakshmana. He must be put to shame. Arrest him. What will Krishna and the Yadu family do? They only rule their kingdom because we allow them to. When we detain their precious Samba, all the Yadu men will understand our power and be humbled once again. As yogis curb their senses by the power of the soul, to catch this prince will bring the Yadus under our control." The elder Kurus, led by Bhishma, authorized this plan. Though Lakshmana, now touched, could not wed any other man, the Kurus chose to show their rage and exercise their will by holding Samba captive, though they didn't want him killed. Duryodhana and many other warriors rushed the prince. The valiant Samba bravely strung his bow. He didn't wince. Despite the unjust nature of Duryodhana's attack, with lion-like ferocity, young Samba fought them back. Heroic Samba struck the mighty Karna and 6 friends. Disabling their chariots, he put them on defense. The Yadu prince was strong, the Kuru warriors all agreed. They praised his faultless archery as arrows made them bleed. A horde of Kurus next forced Samba's chariot to slow. One warrior struck his driver, and another broke his bow. The Kurus captured Samba and with effort tied him down. With Lakshmana, they went back home, their quarry tightly bound. Can anyone guess how the Yadus learned about the kidnapping of Samba? Who's always showing up at opportune times in Srimad Bhagavatam? Narada Muni. So Narada Muni brought the news. When Narada reported this, the Yadus were abhorred. King Ugrasen commanded, "We must arm ourselves for war." Lord Balaram, however, cooled their anger as he said, "Instead of fighting, let us try diplomacy instead." Accompanied by Yadu priests and elders, Balaram appeared to be the moon among the stars, serene and calm. When they made camp near Hastinapur, Balaram resolved that Uddhava should first attempt to get the problem solved. So Uddhava went in the Kuru court and paid respects to Dhritarashtra, Bhishma, Duryodhana, and all the rest. When they learned Balaram was waiting in a nearby place, the Kurus, bearing gifts, came out to meet him face to face. The Kurus worshipped Balaram with gifts of cows and scents, and those who knew his strength, bowed down, avoiding an offense. They asked about each other's health and relatives, and then Lord Balaram forthrightly got to business. He began, "King Ugrasen, our ruler, sent instructions here with me. These words are for your benefit. Now listen carefully. A gang of you attacked our solitary, blameless prince. Since we're related, I have tolerated your offense." The Kurus heard these potent words and all that they implied. Infuriated, they conferred and angrily replied, "Amazing as it is, it seems a shoe has left the ground and tried to set itself on top, above the royal crown. Because these Yadus married in our royal dynasty, we granted them their throne, their wealth, and other property. We shared our royal symbols, such as conch shells, throne, and fans. Like serpents fed with milk, they dare to issue us commands? What, even Indra dare usurp a fig from Kuru hands? Why, that would be a lion's kill surrendered to a lamb." The self-important Kurus, their position clearly shown, then they turned their backs on Balaram and strutted to their homes. Lord Balaram's expression grew as hot as scorching flame. He laughed a laugh that terrified. Can anyone laugh a laugh that terrifies? Somebody. Oh, come on. Louder. Okay, he laughed a laugh that terrified and forcefully proclaimed, "These puffed up, passion-laden rogues have no desire for peace. They'll only come to reason if they're punished like a beast." Lord Krishna and the Yadus held their rage, though it was hard, but these dull-headed rascals show me utter disregard. King Ugrasen commands the gods. Lord Krishna carried home celestial parijata trees. He's fit for any throne. Why, Lakshmi worships Krishna's feet. Do they imagine he does not deserve accoutrements reserved for royalty? The gods pursue the dust from Krishna's feet to grace their crowns. Brahma and Shiva, Lakshmi, me, and others of renown are simply parts of Krishna's all-inclusive state of being. How dare these fools say he's unfit to be a mortal king? The Kurus brag that they have granted us the land we use. They think they are the social head and we the social shoes. Their opulence intoxicates their foolish, swollen heads. What genuine authority would stomach what they've said? Why should these wretched Kurus burden earth another day? With plow in hand, he stood as if to set the world ablaze. As Balaram's expansive plow began to strike the ground, the tremors rocked the city and caused panic all around. The town itself was broken from its base without delay. Lord Balaram then pierced the ground and dragged the town away. The Kurus saw the Ganga, which was flowing to the south, was just about to swallow their whole city in her mouth. In terror, they brought Lakshmana and Samba to the Lord and bowed to him to consummate their hasty new accord. "O Balaram," they cried, "the whole creation rests on you. In ignorance we made offense. Please tell us what to do. We understand that you create, maintain, and end us all. You move the stars and planets as if you were playing ball. As one of countless pastimes, you keep earth upon your head, wind up the whole creation, and take rest upon your bed. Resentment doesn't spark your anger. Rather, you engage in showing anger just to purify us with your rage. As our Creator, Helper, and the soul of all we do, O wielder of all potencies, we bow our heads to you." Propitiated by the trembling Kurus, Balaram withdrew his fearsome anger and grew generous and calm. Relieved, the Kuru prince Duryodhana at once arranged a dowry for his daughter Lakshmana. The gift contained 1,200 mature elephants, each aged some 60 years, 6,000 golden chariots with skilled charioteers, 120,000 horses, each with full effects, and maidservants, 1,000, graced with jewels on their necks. Lord Balaram accepted this. The Kurus pacified. His party went to Dwarka with Samba and his bride. His loved ones there heard every word their hero had to say, and Hastinapur's southern side is higher to this day. Please.
Our sampradaya has a very long tradition of poetry. It goes in our acharyas have written poetry in Sanskrit, in Bengali, in Braj Bhasha, in Brajpuli, in Oriya, in so many different Assamese, so many different languages. I think one of the signs that our tradition is still healthy and strong and vibrant is that this process of poetry writing continues. So beautiful. It's just incredible.
Plagiarism.
Yes, of course. That's our specialty as well in our sampradaya. We distinctively plagiarize from the previous acharyas. And you've done such a wonderful job of taking what Prabhupada has given and just putting it in language that just pops from the page or in our ears when we're right there in the middle of the pastime. So thank you so much. So this is the final one, Lord Balaram as Krishna's servant. As Prabhu mentioned, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adilila, chapter 5, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that Lord Balaram serves Krishna in every possible way. And there are 3 possible types of relationships. One is superior, one is equal, and one is junior, in one way of categorizing relationships. And Lord Balaram covers them all. We've seen him as Krishna's guru, we've seen as Krishna's peer, and now he is positioning himself as Krishna's subordinate, Bhritya, or the one who is dependent on Krishna. This is the baseline of all relationships in Vrindavan. We have been speaking about how the gopis sometimes chastise Krishna, Balaram sometimes tells Krishna what to do. So many different dynamics are there in Vrindavan. But what gives the foundation for all those dynamics of up and down and different emotions and political situations within the family, the foundation of all of that is the devotee's desire to serve Krishna. Everyone is convinced of this fact, that I am a servant of Krishna, including Lord Balaram. There's no difference between Krishna and Balaram, Prabhupada says in one place, except for their color. Right? Krishna is black and Balaram is white. But yet, Krishna, when he comes as Balaram, he comes not as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but as the Supreme Personality of Servitor Godhead. This is the phrase that he uses in his purports. Prabhupada uses in his purports in Chaitanya Charitamrita in this section. He says, Lord Balaram is the Supreme Personality of Servitor Godhead. Why? Because he shows how to serve Krishna in every possible way. Not only does he come in these relationships, but he also appears as Krishna's bedstead, like Ananta Shesh. He comes as Krishna's Brahman thread, as the holy dham of Vrindavan, the abode. He comes as all the paraphernalia that's used for Krishna's service, like the arti tray and so on. In fact, there's another instance where in Vrindavan, Prabhupada is insisting that the temple floor be kept clean. And he says that there is no difference between this black and white marble floor and Krishna and Balaram on the altar. And that is not only, that is theologically a fact, because Lord Balaram is the abode, the temple, the dham, where Krishna appears. He, as Prabhu was saying earlier, in his birth pastime, he purifies the space for Krishna to appear. He enters the womb first and makes it a good home for the Lord to reside for 9 months. So, Lord Balaram is amazing because he finds every possible way to serve Krishna. But that's not even the most amazing thing about him. What is more amazing about Lord Balaram is that he is not only able to serve Krishna in every way, but he is not possessive over that service. He is willing to open up the circle of service and invite anyone and everyone into that circle. That is extraordinary. We know people who are very, very qualified. And with that qualification often comes pride, arrogance, possessiveness, and a desire to do it all, to be at the center of it all, to hold on and never to let go, never to give anyone else a chance because they are it. Lord Balaram could very well do that. He certainly has the capacity. He's Krishna himself, so he can surely take care of himself. One of Krishna's qualities is that he is completely independent, swatantra, right? He has no need to depend on anyone else. And in his form as Lord Balaram, he demonstrates the fact that he can surely take care of himself. And he serves himself in extraordinary ways in this form. And yet, what makes him truly amazing is that even though he could do that all himself, he still hopes, he insists that there is space for us. He opens up the circle of pastimes and says, you too, come in here and participate. Here's your role. And we do it imperfectly and we struggle and we stumble. And he says, that's okay. That's okay. We'll get better at this, right? I'll teach you how to be better at this. So this is essentially the function of spiritual master. This is why he is known as Adi Guru. Because the spiritual master is one who has the capacity to serve Krishna. Tatrati dakshad, very expert, ativallabhasya, and therefore dear to Krishna, and therefore could keep everything to themselves. But despite that, insisting, yuktasya bhaktam janiyunjatopi, we must find a way to engage others in Krishna's service. So this is Lord Balaram's supermost quality, right? His willingness to open up the circle of service for all. To open up the circle of service for all of us in whatever our situation and whatever our circumstance. And here he's giving a chance even to the Kauravas who have already developed great enmity towards Krishna and towards the Pandavas and so on. And he's giving them a chance and saying, I think you can do better. I think you can do better. And with a combination of diplomacy and sweet words and showing his strength and anger and some sharp words as well, he accomplishes it. He manages to prevent an all-out war within the family and allows Samba and Lakshmana to return happily as a married couple and for life to go on.
And for the Kurus to avoid this huge offense, that's the domain of the spiritual master, sometimes to chastise and sometimes to encourage. As Haladhar Maharaj was saying, quoting Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, sometimes the Lord, as a loving father, will kiss the cheek and sometimes slap the cheek.
If I can just add one more
Please.
thing, which is I think it's an important point you raise. Lord Balaram's anger, we've seen it several times. And Srila Prabhupada says that anger is the most difficult thing to use in Krishna service. It can be used, and he gives 3 examples of anger being used in Krishna service in the Nectar of Instruction. The example of Hanuman when he burns Lanka, the example of Arjuna when he's fighting the Kauravas, and the example of Lord Chaitanya. Thank you, Lord Chaitanya when he's protecting Lord Nityananda with Jagai and Madhai. So it can be used, but it's very difficult because anger often becomes disproportionate and it explodes everywhere, and it does more harm than good. But we find in Lord Balaram's pastimes that he uses anger very perfectly in a situation. He'll be very peaceful, like he said, like the moon amongst the stars, very calm, right? Just showing up very. And then when he needs to accomplish something that's not working otherwise, his anger will come up and the whole city is ready to head into the Yamuna. And within a moment after that, they say a few verses of pleasing words. Sorry, we misunderstood. You're actually the Lord of the universe, etc. And he's calm again. He's ready for the wedding and ready.
No grudge.
No grudge. No grudge. No lingering anger. No, you got to pay something for this, right? None of that. He just lets it go immediately. So that's ideal use of anger, which is extremely difficult for us to pull off. Srila Prabhupada demonstrated that use of anger quite often, actually. The devotees who were with him a lot would say that his anger would show up like a storm. It would just come. It would completely take your breath away, and just as quickly it was gone, right? Like a flash of lightning, and he was completely back calm again, just like Lord Baladev.
Right. This is using anger. Yes, beautiful. Thank you. So I thought we could conclude with just a few words of that Krishna speaks in praise of Lord Balaram, and then open it up for questions, reflections, and other leelas you might like to share. So you remember that Krishna is killing the demons in Vrindavan, such as Putana and others. He is dealt with Lord Brahma, who has stolen the cows and cowherd boys, which, by the way, mystified everybody except whom? Balaram. Yeah, even mystified Balaram until he figured it out. So Krishna is so very fond of his elder brother, sometimes his teacher, his friend, and his servant. So he spoke, before they met the Denakasura demon, he spoke these words in praise of Lord Balaram. So Krishna said to Balaram, they were walking through the forest and all the trees seemed to be bending over, laden with fruits. So he says, your feet attract these trees. Just see them offer fruits to you as if on hands and knees. They pray you'll lift the ignorance that brought them to a birth where they can't play with us because they're rooted to the earth. Those bees that buzz around you seem to be extremely wise. They must have been great sages in their recent former lives, for now they will not leave you as they loudly sing your praise, despite your skillful cover as a cowherd boy at play. The peacocks step before you as they dance in ecstasy. The deer, who look like gopis, gaze at you most lovingly. The cuckoos sing out Vedic hymns to welcome you today, for great souls welcome great souls to their homes in all these ways. Your footprints bless Vrindavan's soil, your hands her shrubs and trees. Your glances leave her rivers, hills, and animals quite pleased. You favor all the gopis with embraces from your arms, which Lakshmi, queen of wealth, can't get despite her matchless charms. When Balaram, fatigued from play, desired to take a nap, he'd lie beneath a tree and place his head on one boy's lap. Lord Krishna would massage his feet, refresh him with a fan, and place a cup of river water near his brother's hand. So this loving relationship between brothers, full of diverse adventures and implications. Shri Krishna Balaram Ki Jai. Any reflections, questions? Prabhupada Priya? We have a mic.
Hare Krishna. Thank you both so much. That was really ecstatic. So Radhika Raman Prabhu, you said that when Balaram asks Krishna something, he always says yes. He always agrees to Balaram's desire. But I was thinking of another pastime where Balaram wanted something and Krishna said no. When Balaram wanted Subhadra to marry Duryodhana. So what's going on with that?
Actually, that was the pastime I was thinking of as I was saying, because Krishna there, even though he disagrees with Balaram, he has to find a way, a backhanded way, to get his desire, because no one can cross Lord Balaram explicitly. He's the boss, and so Krishna then talks to Arjuna in secret, and he says that this is what we're planning. This is the time you should take her, and this is what Subhadra wants as well. So, as brothers do, they will have arguments. There's no question about it. But ultimately, externally, Balaram always wins. And behind the scenes, then Krishna has to find a way to still accomplish his goals. And in Subhadra's case, he does this by arranging Arjun to steal Subhadra away. I think you're 100% right. Krishna and Balaram have a very, very dynamic relationship. And like with any brotherly relationship, yes, there's respect, and particularly in this culture that we're reading of, that respect, the elder brother is very much like a father in the family, so that respect is very much there. And yet, like brothers, they're also arguing, and they're fighting, and they're disagreeing. And sometimes they're speaking very lovingly, like we just read.
After Arjuna kidnapped Subhadra, then Krishna said to Balaram, aren't they a lovely couple?
I think Balaram gives his blessings in the end, doesn't he, for the newlyweds?
Right.
Balaram also always comes around to Krishna. Like he understands. Later on he sees, okay, Krishna, he disagreed with the whole idea of the Battle of Kurukshetra. He said, I don't think this should happen, right? As we see, he's a peacemaker, like most of the time. He's trying to be a diplomatic, to bring people together. We heard 2 stories already of Lord Balaram trying to smooth things out, right? But eventually then, even at the end of the battle, he comes around to Krishna's perspective and he says, okay, I can see why you did this.
There is one implication though. Balaram he's come as the elder brother after being the younger brother as Lakshmana before in Lord Ram's pastimes. But even as the elder brother, Krishna's doing what he wants. So he said, next time I'm just going to do whatever I want. That's Lord Nityananda. And then Prema.
Thank you for the wonderful discussion, Prabhus. My question, I may have a silly question, but I'm just trying to understand. We know that we say all the incarnations, Krishna is Ram, and then Balaram is Lakshman, and then all the other incarnations we have that, how they both come. But then technically, we know that all incarnations are ultimately Balaram's incarnations, even Ram. So how do we understand that? How is it Krishna's incarnation, but then coming through Balaram?
How are they Krishna's incarnations coming through Balaram?
Why do we say, so we know that ultimately all incarnations are Balaram's incarnations, expansions. Krishna only expands into Balaram, and then Balaram further expands into Vishnu and all the incarnations. So then how do we understand that Ram is Krishna and Lakshman is Balaram?
That's a silly question. No, I'm just kidding.
So you're right. Krishna expands as Balaram, and then Balaram expands as the 4, the Chaturvyuha, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Vasudev. And then they expand further into the 3 Vishnus in this material world, Karanadakshai, Garbhodakshai, Kshirodakshai, Vishnu. And then from Mahavishnu, or through Mahavishnu, all the incarnations appear in this world, right? So by these expansions, basically the reason for all these expansions is that Krishna is creating a mechanism for him to reach out to the material world. Because Krishna's there in Goloka Vrindavan, and he's engaged in this endless play. Right? It just goes on, and it keeps him very busy, as we see. He's totally absorbed in all these politics of Vrindavan and very much happy there. But he's still concerned. It's like a concern in the back of your head, someone you care about. So you're having a good time, but there's some worry there. And so Krishna's worried about the material world. And so he finds a way to reach out. And he does this by these multiple incarnations that allows him to descend to the material world and to be there with living entities. So these these expansions are kind of like a pathway he creates, like a mechanism, a vehicle. So when Krishna appears, he comes down through that road, through that pathway, which he has made. It's made of him, right? And he comes down, he enters the material world. And so then these incarnations, like Lord Ramachandra, Lord Nrsimha, use that pathway to appear. But Krishna doesn't lose his identity as Krishna, as Balaram, as in all his different forms. This is just a vehicle for him to appear. And we understand that when Krishna comes as Krishna and Balaram comes as Balaram, in that form, he is not using even the vehicle of Mahavishnu. It is Krishna, the original Supreme Personality of God. It's Swayam Bhagavan who's appeared. But in the other incarnations, he uses that vehicle, that pathway to come. But that pathway, just like if I drive down a road, then it doesn't make me lose my identity as who I am. So in that way, we can think of these expansions as being vehicles, media for Krishna to appear. But still, Krishna is Krishna, Balaram is Balaram, Lord Ram is Ram, Lakshman is Lakshman, despite the fact that they all come through the Chaturvyuha, through Mahavishnu, and ultimately through Lord Balaram.
Reminds me of like a subordinate, a boss might ask a subordinate, set up some meetings for me. And I'll attend the meetings, you set them up.
Thank you.
Good question, actually, North. Yes, it was a good question.
Thank you both. So enlivening. So I was reading last night, I forget the terminology, but when I was reading the pastimes of Balaram, it says that actually Shiva Shambhu is manifesting the material creation because Balaram and Krishna don't touch the material creation. I wonder if you could elaborate on that for me.
Oh. Good. Do you have some knowledge on that?
So that pathway that we described, from Krishna to Balaram to the Chaturvyuha to another Chaturvyuha through the three Vishnus, the first Vishnu is the first time Krishna has touched the material world, right? And then when he comes as Mahavishnu, he glances at the material energy, and through his glance impregnates her with all the living entities who want to live in this material world. That glance of Krishna contacting directly the material energy, that is Lord Shiva. Right? So Lord Shiva is the form of Krishna. He's described in Brahma Samhita as yogurt. Krishna is like milk. So milk is basically yogurt, but milk has been touched by culture, right? The acidophilus and bifidus and the other, right? It's when it's touched by that, it transforms. So when Krishna as Mahavishnu is touched by the material energy, right, that she becomes his consort, Parvati, then he transforms into Lord Shiva. And in that way, then he becomes the father and she becomes the mother of this whole creation.
Nice. Thank you. It's a really good question, so I'm glad you're here.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the nice class. My question is related to Balaram's relationship with Duryodhana, or him accepting him as a guru. And it seems in one sense that, like even this incident of him going to get Lakshmana and Samba back, he didn't respond in a way you should respect the guru. So it brings a doubt about how Duryodhana viewed guruship, or a spiritual master. In some senses, I think there was an incident where he he put flowers on the path when Balaram came and appeared to be worshipping him. So is that just a guru, as the person who just taught him how to wield a mace, or is it just like...
He was not a very good disciple. As we saw when Samba was kidnapped, he sided with his family rather than his guru. As we saw in the battle of Kurukshetra, he sided with his family rather than his guru. Balaram came to make peace and asked both sides to refrain from fighting, and both sides would not concur, so he left. It makes us vulnerable when we accept responsibility of leadership, as I was talking about on Saturday, either as a parent, right? Because it's huge risk to have a child. So many things could go wrong. And then the child may turn out to be crooked or not what we wanted. And it's a huge risk to take a disciple, because the relationship is ultimately dependent on the willingness of the disciple to submit to the instruction of the guru. So Duryodhana was a very difficult disciple, and yet Balaram accepted him because that's his role in Krishna's service. Again, Krishna's busy with his loving devotees, and the rest of us are with Balaram. Like to add anything?
So does that mean that because he accepted the Supreme Personality of God in some capacity, obviously there's some benefit towards him. Would that mean that he gets liberation?
Even if we fall down and fail in our efforts, there's no loss. We try to serve Guru and Krishna. At least one version of the Mahabharata has when Yudhishthira ascends to the heavenly kingdom or the spiritual world, what have you, there's Duryodhana. He says, where are my brothers? Oh, they're in hell. And he's heading to hell. I don't want to be here if my brothers aren't here. So this was Yudhishthira's final test. Yes, without a doubt, Duryodhana was killed in the presence of Krishna. And so certainly he was liberated like all the warriors. What is it? Duryodhana means one who is bad. Durya?
Terrible in battle, or terrible in rule.
Terrible in battle or in rule. Okay.
Mother Nandini wants to comment on what you said.
Please.
I had been reading that that Duryodhana felt, Balaram felt that Duryodhana was more skilled with the mace, and that Bhima was more crude and strong, so maybe that has something there.
And Krishna sided with Bhima. Again, a subterfuge. There's a question over here.
I have a question about Lord Nityananda. We had a little controversy not too long ago, a debate on our neighborhood, Kalakantha neighborhood. And Lord Nityananda, I understand, does act in the capacity of spiritual master to Lord Chaitanya in certain circumstances. Am I correct or wrong?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yes. No, the only reason Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes these three roles that Lord Balaram plays in relation to Krishna is because he's making the point in relation to Nityananda Prabhu.
Got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Your neighborhood group has very elevated controversies, I have to say.
Thank you for a wonderful class. So, Radhika Raman Prabhu, you mentioned in your class, in your talk, that Lord Balaram doesn't tolerate any offenses committed towards any devotees. So this is, this question is not in a challenging mood. I want to make this clear because few days back, His Holiness Haldar Swami was here. He gave a wonderful talk and he mentioned this point that many times it happens that devotees, they want to understand everything by dint of their mundane intelligence, and we cannot unless Yasadeva Parabhakti, Prakashante Mahatmana, right? So this is not in challenging mood. I sincerely want to churn the nectar here because it's a wonderful opportunity. You both are here. So we see that Draupadi, Mother Draupadi, she was being disrobed. She's a pure devotee. And Pandavas, they were n number of times they were offended by Duryodhana and party. But we see Lord Balaram favoring Duryodhana. Also we see, imagine Romaharshana Sutta, who is son of none other than Sutta Goswami, right? Imagine ISKCON world, top gurus. So there is a tinge of pride or something, right, when he enters. And same Balaram, he kills him, right? He cannot tolerate. But then here are Kauravas, especially Duryodhana, who is his disciple, right? And n number of offenses being committed towards Pandavas. So he does that. That is one part of the question. The other part is we see what's happening nowadays in Bangladesh, right? Many devotees are being tormented, killed, right? Persecuted. Lord Jagannath's deity is being burnt, right? This happened a few hundred years ago in Jagannath Puri also. There was this tyrant called Kalapahad, he burned Lord Jagannath's deity. So there are pastimes where any such incidents happen, Lord Baldev, he cannot tolerate. But now we see all these offenses are committed towards devotees and towards the deities, right? And I'm sorry to say, but why Lord Balaram is not, to his reputation, why is he not responding? Why? Because on Saturday you mentioned a wonderful point that those who are situated at Nishtha level, for them it is okay, they will still, because they take shelter of the philosophy. But those whose anchors are not still embedded into the bottom of the ocean, right? So what about those? Their faith may get shaken up, right? So if you can throw some light and churn some nectar, I'm sure there must be some higher reasons which can bring some joy to the devotee's heart. Thank you.
Oh, so to me,
you both too, please churn.
Okay. The fundamental reason is that we are not meant to find a niche of joy and lasting satisfaction in this world. If everything was just so great, why would we want to go back to Godhead? That's one consideration. The other is that by putting his devotees in distress, the Lord increases their glories. Just look at Srila Prabhupada, for example. And we read the Prabhupada Lilamrita up to age 71. It was all pretty much effort and failure and effort and failure in Prabhupada's attempt to fulfill his guru's order. And his glory, perhaps his greatest glory, is that he never stopped trying. So this just enhances his wonderful reputation and incredible accomplishment. So it's not our domain to try to understand why Krishna does things. What is important is to know and trust that Krishna is doing them for a good reason. Sheshika Prabhu writes in his wonderful new book, The Four Questions. Question number 2 is, or 3 is it? What is the lesson? So he says there's only 2 kinds of people in this world. There's victims or learners, and you can't be both. So when there's reverses, the devotee responds, okay, what is Krishna doing here? This is not happening independently of him. Somehow Krishna is doing this. Why is Krishna doing it? I will find out in due course of time. And the final analysis, we know Krishna does not want me to stay here.
Thank you for that question. It's a difficult one because it's a reality we all face. I think we need to be convinced inside that there are two great qualities that Krishna has in this world. One is his mercy and one is his justice. And Krishna values both. When he comes as Lord Balaram, he demonstrates both. Sometimes he shows his mercy and sometimes he shows his justice. Sometimes he acts in the mood of the all-forgiving devotee. Like when Nityananda Prabhu is being harmed by Jagai and Madai. Nityananda Prabhu is ready to forgive, even a direct offense to him. And other times, like with the story of Romaharshana Sutta, he's acting as the Supreme Lord and not tolerating offense to him or to devotees. So justice and mercy are both equally important. Each one loses meaning without the other. A world that has justice and no mercy becomes a world that is impossible to live in because there's no opportunity to make mistakes and to learn from those mistakes. And if there's a world with only mercy and no justice, that world too is impossible to live in, because then no one can be held accountable for what they do, and everyone has free rein to harm others. So Krishna has perhaps the most difficult task in the world, which is to balance these two things for all these wayward living entities who themselves do not understand the balance between justice and mercy. And so, as we look at the suffering that is present in this world, in Bangladesh, devotees are being harmed, in other places in the world as well, and so many other innocent living entities, right, being harmed in so many ways. We have to recognize that conviction that Prabhu is speaking of, right, this conviction that Krishna will address offenses one way or the other. Sometimes he addresses those offenses by coming dramatically in the form of Lord Balaram or on the back of Garuda and taking his chakra and slicing off the neck of the crocodile who's attacking Gajendra. Right? Sometimes Krishna does very dramatic things and makes his justice obvious. And other times he just works behind the scenes through the law of karma and ensures that that person has a limited lifespan and will come back again to learn from that experience by experiencing what they have harmed others. And yet other times he offers his causeless mercy to someone because of some flicker of potential, of desire that he sees in them. And just as we have to give Krishna the prerogative to offer justice when he wants to, we also have to give him the prerogative of offering mercy when he wants to. That he understands a person's heart, someone we think definitely ought to be demolished. And yet Krishna sees something good in them, just like as Balaram, he saw something good in Duryodhana that he felt was worth fanning. Okay, in his form as Lord Balaram, he may have tolerated what happened to the Pandavas, but not in his form as Krishna. Right? He ensured that all of them received what they did. So in one form or another, in one way or the other, but usually not visible to our eyes, usually in this material world, indirectly, Krishna will accomplish his aims. He will do what is needed to ensure that everyone learns from their experiences. Some people learn best with the plow on their head. Other people learn best with compassion. And we have to have the humility to recognize that we do not know enough about the circumstance or about the hearts of every living entity to know which approach works better in which circumstance. That is a tough thing for us to handle because we feel like we know. But we have to recognize Krishna knows far more. I barely know myself. Krishna knows me and all other living entities. This is the meaning of causeless mercy. Causeless mercy is a phrase that we use regularly, but it's a phrase that's actually very difficult. If we think of its implications, it's very difficult to digest. Causeless mercy means that if Krishna chooses to be compassionate to someone who definitely deserves to be destroyed, and we cannot find a reason for it, that's causeless. That has no cause, means no reason. It seems irrational, but that's Krishna's prerogative. That's the one right that he holds as God, right? Otherwise, he creates a world of laws. He creates a material nature that functions according to order. And he's happy to live according to that order, even though he doesn't have to. He obeys those own laws because he understands, as he says in the Gita, he says, I know the problems that will be created if I were to break my own rules. But he does hold on to that little prerogative of when he needs to respond to a particular living entity, Krishna will do it on his own. So that is our journey. That is our journey to learn how to digest that, how to accept it, how to recognize that yes, justice and mercy both operate in this world. And the person who operates both is perfect. So let it play out, and let me play my small role in Krishna's hand in justice and in mercy.
Sadhu.
Right.
Just one last point. You mentioned about the balance, and that reminded me, one of the names of Lord Balaram is Shesha, and in Sanskrit, one of the meanings of Shesha is balance, to balance.
Hare Krishna. So I had a couple of thoughts that I would like to share. One is that we were talking about Lord Balaram's relationship with Duryodhana. My understanding is that Duryodhana, he approached Lord Balaram to learn how to use the club, because Lord Balaram's good with his club. He didn't approach Balaram as a spiritual teacher, right? It would be like as if a devotee goes to university to learn engineering. So you learn some material skill from your professor, but they're not your guru in every sense of the word. Certainly not in the sense that we, like a spiritual master. So Duryodhana didn't interact with Balaram as a spiritual master. He took him, he was just learning some material skill. So what we see here is that if somebody approaches a bona fide guru, because Balaram is obviously the most bona fide guru, but only wants some material benefit from the guru, they're going to end up being destroyed. But they'll get some benefit because they got some sukriti of at least somehow coming in contact with the bona fide guru. So he was destroyed in the presence of Krishna and got liberated. So that's one point. The other thing is, I was thinking about the difference, which came up as the difference in how Lord Balaram tolerated so much from Duryodhana, although he was, evil in many ways, but seemed extremely intolerant with a slight tinge of an offense by Ramaharshana Sutta. I was thinking that it has to do with the position of both, right? Because Duryodhana, he was a king, and he was ruling. That's one thing, but he wasn't professing to be a knower of the absolute truth, right? So if he would make some mistakes, okay, some mismanagement, people might get killed. Nobody really gets killed because the soul's eternal. So from the point of view of Lord Balaram, it's like, all right, we can tolerate his stuff. But with Ramaharshana Sutta, he's sitting on the Vyasasan, right? And he's speaking as a giver of the absolute truth, and the absolute truth walks into the assembly and he disregards him. So when the Lord sees falsity in those who claim religious, then that is not tolerated. So it just shows that the person who's speaking Shastra, who's speaking Bhagavatam, they need to be qualified. And we see throughout the Bhagavatam there's so much mention of qualified speaker, right? And the qualifications of a speaker. And Ramaharshana Sutta did not have those qualifications. So Balaram just like, get this guy out of here. Put a qualified person on the seat.
Very interesting point. Balaram gave that knowledge to Duryodhana, obviously knowing he was approaching him for something material. But he taught him anyway. So that's an application of mercy. And when the Brahmins, who were the religious leaders, refused in their pride to feed Krishna and Balaram, Krishna he didn't kill them, he humiliated them. So again, every situation requires a proper application of justice and mercy.
And some finesse.
Both brilliant points. Thank you. Excellent points.
Really good.
The story of Ramaharshana Sutta is pretty much the scariest story for me. Because I was just like, oh, Krishna. Yeah. And in front of Lord Balaram, it's like, oh, God, please be kind to me.
So at that pastime, at Naimisharanya, all the sages were appalled, wasn't it? Because they had put him in that exalted position. So, yes. So, so in that capacity, Lord Balaram was acting as the guru, would you say?
Right,
Or
teaching
teaching.
the importance of servant leadership. If somebody's in a leadership role, they had better be in the mood of serving and not enjoying that. Yes.
the comment was that he was so knowledgeable in all the Vedas, but that he missed the essence when the Supreme Personality of God had appeared. He didn't.
Right, and yet when Shiva did not rise when Daksha, no, was it the opposite? Shiva didn't stand up when Daksha came, and Daksha was insulted.
Right, exactly the same
Yes,
pastimes.
but he was in a superior position.
But they said he had to atone.
Hmm.
They were all
Yes, the sages said, whatever you do, Lord Balaram is perfect.
right.
We're not going to question that. But if you would like to set an example of atonement.
Right. Yes. Hare Krishna. He actually said that he could bring him back to life if they wanted, remember?
Yeah.
On the point of justice and mercy, we can, if we go by this argument that we have to leave it up to Krishna, he has to choose the prerogative. There are chances that we can become very disjoint with this world, right? Anything that's happening, we might not get involved in any capacity and just say, okay, Krishna will handle this. And yet, we see the devotees tilting more towards mercy. Like, at least Advaitacharya, he's seeing all this happening in Navadvip, and yet he doesn't stop getting involved. There are ways in which it seems like devotees can get involved in a situation. So, can you shed some light on the balance where we can become completely disinterested in this world, where we would never want to go and approach people, and at the same time, there are ways in which we can participate.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said that we should act as if everything depends on us and pray as if everything depends on Krishna. We have to act and respond to these, and we cannot say, oh, Krishna will take care of it. We can say that only when we have given our very best effort, and then we know that it is not Krishna's plan for us to be the doers in this particular situation. Krishna is not acting through us. So there's never a rationale to not give our best effort. Would you like to add it?
That's wonderful what you said. I'll just add that I think it's that there are times in life when we have to hold on and times when we have to let go. And this is the essential challenge of Bhagavad Gita, right? Arjuna wants to let go and say, everything depends on Krishna. And Krishna saying, no, it depends on you at this moment, right? You need to act. And yes, okay, I'm in control, but I've chosen you as the instrument. So please act. And later on, as we were discussing a couple of days ago, later on in life, when the time is right, then Arjuna understands that Krishna wants him to let go. No doubt the problems of the kingdom will continue forever. But now my time is to let go, right? So whether we need to act or not to act in a situation is perhaps the most difficult question, right? This is the question of dharma. That is the main question throughout the Mahabharata that Yudhishthira is struggling with. The whole story is, when do I act? When do I respond to what's going on? How long do I forgive? And Yudhishthira Maharaj is more on the side of forgiveness. Let's wait. And Bhima is more on the side, we got to act now. And Krishna's, in between. He's giving advice in different ways at different times. But in general, this is the theme of Mahabharata, of Bhagavad Gita, of Ramayana. More so than to be or not to be. That is the question. That's not so much a question in Bhagavad Gita. We're always being, right? It's really to do or not to do. That is the question. And for a and in our life as a devotee, this is our big question: is when do I act, and have I acted enough, right? And so what Prabhu said, I think, is so nice, that we act until Krishna makes it clear that no, this is not in your power. You are not meant to be the instrument for this, right? Someone else will be the instrument. But many factors can go into that. It can be, one of the factors is the circumstance. Do I have the ability to affect anything in the circumstance? Another factor is our own capacity. Do I have the capacity to affect change? Am I the right person, or should I take this to someone else and ask them to act? Because perhaps the situation requires someone of their capacity or quality or level of maturity or trust or whatever it might be. So many different factors are there. And taking all of those into account and knowing when to act, that is a difficult thing. And this is why we need the association of devotees to know what is the right moment to act and to what extent should I push, right? Think about how much Prabhupada pushed to spread Krishna consciousness in the West. Someone could have told him that you've tried and now you're 70. It's time to let go, right? And yet, Krishna was telling him, no, this is the time to act. So as Prabhupada says, Krishna is not stereotyped. We don't know. And we must take the association of devotees and the guidance of the Super Soul through prayer to know when to act.
Could I add one thing on that? As a member of AARP, that ultimately Krishna forces us to let go. And my generation is struggling with that right now because it's been our life and soul to be serving Prabhupada in this movement, and yet our capacity to do so is diminishing. And so we're forced to let go at some point. And trying to hold on to it is, what I'm observing, is not healthy for the movement. So eventually, we're all forced to let go of everything.
I had a very quick question. What, according to you, is the recommended mood in which we can worship Lord Balaram?
The recommended mood to worship Lord Balaram. Any thoughts on that?
Srila Prabhupada explains the meaning of the word Balaram. In Krishna book, he says, Bala is strength, and particularly for devotees it refers to spiritual strength. And Rama refers to joy or pleasure, because through service to Krishna we can experience pleasure, and Lord Balaram is the ideal servant, right? So we can pray to Lord Balaram in this way, that my dear Lord, please give me the strength, the spiritual strength, to serve you and experience this joy of Krishna consciousness. In this way, we can pray to Lord Balaram to make his name a reality in our life.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So Radhika Ramanji, I think you have given the best example or the best explanation I've heard so far between mercy and justice. Just to stretch that concept a little further in the context of Bangladesh and all the political things that are happening. And so what happened here is there are certain people who are selflessly serving the Lord, and some attack happens. So should they have acted? Should they have armed themselves and attacked the attackers? You may say, I'll depend totally on mercy and get killed. Or Prabhupada also recommended carrying firearms on farms. I have a farm here in Wolf City, north of here. So should we arm ourselves? Because the Armageddon is going to happen eventually. It's already happening. And more of the demoniac forces are acting. We are seeing that in these elections also. So what do we do? Should we arm ourselves, or should we just depend on Krishna? And it's a difficult question, but it is.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, that's a question that I think many devotees wrestle with. And the best answer I could offer you is that you have to judge your own nature. If you have a Kshatriya nature and you are prepared to fight, then you should be equipped. But if you don't, and you want to equip yourself anyway, then your likelihood of being successful is very small. So all of these social issues are just manifestations of a lack of Krishna consciousness. Right? Ideally, the Kshatriyas are defending everybody. And we could be able to count on the Kshatriyas to defend us if we are not of that nature. And it's a band-aid at best to try to deal with a lack of Krishna consciousness. Abortion is a similar thing. Abortions should be allowed or not allowed, but what is the real cause of abortion is a lack of Krishna consciousness, right? So the best answer I can give to your question is that there's no material answer. It's what we should be focused on in our capacity is how can we inject more Krishna consciousness into society. Then these things will automatically be reconciled. By taking one pole or the other, we're not really going to make any difference. Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. That's what we can do. Yeah, and that gives us a lot of solace as we age because we all want to help the world. So it's seen by the world as very unrelated to just spread your spiritual teachings. The worldly people say, why don't you do something practical? But from our point of view, there's nothing more practical that we could be doing because if people become Krishna conscious, then all of these issues will be reconciled immediately. The violence, the lack of protection, whatever. Okay?
In Mayapur, when the devotees, the Muslims attacked and the devotees, I think they were trying to steal the deity, if I recall, maybe Radharani or what was it? But there was a whole, they had arms and they fought.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then they ended up being in jail, but then
Mm-hmm.
they realized that they were in the right, isn't it? So how, is that a similar thing or?
Right, these are all time, place, and circumstance. There are some devotees who are competent to handle firearms. And they know what they're doing and they're able to provide protection. They can act as kshatriyas. Devotee can act in any varna and any ashram. However, we have to act according to our nature. We can't try to impose another's work upon ourselves. Yeah. So again, no hard and fast answer. All very situational. Who are you? Who do you have? What is the danger? What is the... And obviously in that circumstance, devotees who were able to had firearms and they used them to some effect. Okay, I think we're... Our time master, tell us what we should do.